Hello and welcome to Peaceful Gathering Star Garden Block of the Month, Month 3. For the first 2 months we went over how to construct and applique the 4 center blocks along with the stars and the stems. This month you'll be receiving in your kit green material and red plaid material to make the leaves and circles for the 4 center blocks. You'll want to reserve any leftover green and red material, and we will use those for the stems, leaves, and circles in the 4 outside borders. Before we begin, what you'll need to do is choose one of the green fabrics that you would like to use for the stem in the bird border of the quilt. You'll need to cut 1.5 strips sewn together end to end that will equal a 42-inch strip. Now, it does not need to be cut on a 45-degree angle, but it should be cut on the diagonal so that we can achieve some nice smooth curves for that particular stem. Today we'll start with the leaves. I'm going to show you 2 different methods to make the leaves. For the first method, you're going to need some freezer paper. I like Kim Deal's Best Applique freezer paper. It is a little sturdier and thicker than the freezer paper you would purchase in the grocery store. You'll need your stencil that was provided in the kit. I also like to use a pencil. Now, there are 3 leaves per stem on the center blocks, and there's 8 stems. So you're going to need 24 leaves for each of the center blocks. There are 4 center blocks, as you know, so you're going to need 96 leaves. That's a lot of leaves to make. So I'm going to show you a easy way to make more than one at a time. The pattern also calls for a total of 161 leaves, and that is for the remaining leaves in the outside borders. If you would like, you can go ahead and complete all of those leaves at this time since you do have the material, or for this month, the only thing that we're really looking to do are the 96 leaves for the 4 center blocks. All right, so the applique paper comes in sheets of 8.5 by 11. The leaf here is about 2 inches. I'm going to go ahead and cut some strips into 2.5 inch pieces. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to use my pencil to trace one leaf like this. Once I trace my leaf, I'm going to fold my paper accordion style like this. And this is going to allow me to cut out more stencils at a time. All right. Once you have your paper folded like this, you're going to want to go ahead and pin or staple the outside edges. I've tried skipping this part before, and it always inevitably starts to slip, and then the leaves are not as accurate as I would like them to be. Then I'm going to take my paper scissors and I'm going to cut out through all the layers of leaves. Now you're going to want to make sure that your edges are nice and smooth, and what I have found, rather than moving the scissors around, is I turn the paper to come in and meet the scissors, and that usually makes it nice and smooth for me. All right, so and then instead of cutting out one leaf, you've cut out 1, 2, 3, you have 5 leaves. You'll want to repeat this until you have a total of 96. What you'll do next is you'll take some of your green material, and you want to make leaves of different colors. They won't all be the same. And what I like to do is I take my fabric glue stick, and on the non-shiny side, I'm going to put a little bit of glue, and then I'm going to put my leaf on a diagonal here. Now, since we're doing multiple leaves, you'll have multiple pieces on your fabric, and you'll want to make sure that they're at least a ½ inch apart. And the reason for that is the leaves that we're cutting out are the actual finished size. We still need to add our seam allowance to the stenciled piece here. The next step, you want to take your fabric scissors, and you can go ahead and separate these at this point if you want. It's a little bit easier to cut them individually, and you're going to cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the outside of your stencils. Now, the reason that I had you glue down the non-shiny side of the freezer paper is this is going to allow you next to take this to your ironing board and press one seam to the back side of the shiny side, which it's going to stick to. Let me show you this one here. So we'll do one side. You want to make sure you go past both of the points, and then when you're done with that, you'll flip it over and then you'll iron the other side. These points are not very pointy like the stars were, so you should be able to just fold over, iron over, and you will have a nice pointy leaf when you're done, like that. For the second method today, I'd like to show you Kieran K. Buckley's Perfect Leaves. For this particular method, you're going to need the heat-resistant Perfect Leaves, which comes with a variety of templates. There's one for each of the sizes. You're going to need some spray starch. I like the Mary Ellen's Best Press. You'll also need a small container to put some of the starch in, as well as a paintbrush and your fabric scissors. To begin with, what you'll do is you'll choose the stencil that best matches the leaf that we're going to be making today. I've already pulled that out. It's not exact, the exact size of the stencil, but it's close enough. And what you'll do first of all is you'll take your green material, and on the back side of the green material, you're going to go ahead and take a fabric marker, which I just had mine here a minute ago. Here we go. And you're going to trace the outside with your fabric marker like this. Now I've gone ahead and traced 2 of them here. Like the previous method, this is going to be your completed size, so you'll want to go ahead when you're cutting this out and cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance outside of the drawn line, like we did in the last step. So you will have the 96 leaves that look like this. You're going to take your starch. You'll put a little bit in your container. You'll take your paintbrush, and you'll want to paint the seam allowance with your starch. This is on the back side, the wrong side of your fabric. And then you'll take your heat-resistant stencil and place it inside the drawn line, and you'll take it to your ironing board, and like the last stencil that we made, you'll go ahead and press this on one side so that you end up with something like this, a leaf that looks like this. You'll turn it around and iron the other side, and you have a nice little leaf. It looks like this. So you can see it's a little bit different size than the other one. What this step or this method will allow you to do is to bypass cutting out 96 stencils, and you'll just be making them one at a time. Before we move on to the circles, I wanted to show you the difference. The one on the right is the leaf that I made with the heat-resistant template, and as you can see, this is ready to put on the background fabric and applique into place. This leaf here that we made with the applique paper is also ready to applique in place, but before we do that, I would remove the applique paper like this before appliquing in place. The last step for today will be to make the circles. And what I like to use are these Karen K. Buckley. They're bigger perfect circles. They're heat resistant templates like the leaf template that I just demonstrated for you. Now these come in 2 different sizes. For this particular quilt, we do need the bigger perfect circles. And they come in an assortment of sizes. There's 2 for each size. And like the leaves, you'll need to choose the one that matches our circle stencil. And I've got one of those here. Now you've received 2 different plaid fabrics in your kit this month. And the nice thing about this fabric is for both of these, there's a light strip and a dark strip. So what I did to achieve 4 different colors for my circles is I cut some of my circles out of the darker strip and some of them out of the lighter strip. And I did that for both materials. You've got the lighter strip and the darker strip. And you can see the stencil fits nicely over the darker and the lighter strips. Again, the stencil that we're using is the finished size, so we're going to be tracing the stencil on the back side of the paper. And what I did was I just took a small piece. I'm going to do one of the lighter strips, and I use my fabric marker to trace the stencil like we did for the leaves. And you'll want to make sure again that you have at least a 1/2 inch in between your stencils. And you'll take your fabric scissors. I go ahead and cut them apart to make it easier. And then you'll cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance outside of the drawn circles. Once you've got that done, you're gonna need some heavy thread. I just use quilting thread. It's a little bit heavier. And what you'll need to do is sew a running stitch within the seam allowance of your stencil like this all the way around. So I've got it knotted at the beginning. You're going to want to leave a tail at the end. Once you've done this, you're going to place your stencil inside of your material and just pull the string like this. So you have a nice gathered edge. I usually run my finger around the edge to make sure there aren't any lumps or bumps that need to be smoothed out. And then what I do is I hold my string on the other side. I use my starch. I again like the best press. I actually have a misting bottle. If you've never used one of these before, they're really nice. I think it's a little bit more efficient way of using the spray starch. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray my seam allowance, and then I'll take it over to my ironing board and I'll hold this down for about 10 seconds. Now there's 2 of these, so while this one is cooling, I went ahead and made another one. Once these are cool, what you're going to want to do, this is why you have the long tail on your thread, is you're just going to peel back a little bit of the side like this so that you can slip the stencil out. And then you will need to tighten this up just a little bit to reshape your circle. And then you'll go ahead and trim off your tail, and you've got a perfect circle ready to applique in place. Now there's 8 circles on each of the squares, so you're going to need 32 for the 4 center squares. There's a total of 60 circles that are needed for the entire quilt. The pattern actually states that you need 50, but that's incorrect. You actually need 60 to complete this quilt. Once you've completed all of your circles and your leaves, I wanted to point out to you how I placed them on my quilt. If you take a close look, you can see that, for example, I chose to put similar colored circles together. Also, on the leaves, you can tell that I've grouped similar colors together for each of the leaf stems. This is a scrappy quilt, so have fun. You don't have to do what I did. I love scrappy quilts, but I prefer to have more of a controlled or planned scrappy, if you will, quilt. So just keep that in mind. Once everything's done, play around with it a little bit, lay some of your leaves and circles out to see how you would like. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope that you found this helpful. If you'd like to join us for our Zoom meeting, it is scheduled for next Thursday, August 6th. Please note that the time has changed. We'll be meeting at 9:30. And if you would like to put on your calendars, our meeting for September is scheduled for September 3rd, again at 9:30. Thank you.